Thousands of authors have made the jump to self-publishing. Now you can take control of your own destiny and get your book published today with help from self-publishing experts Adam Stempel and Chris Wallace on the Written Well podcast.
Hello, and welcome to episode 7.
Somewhere in there. I've lost count with all the guests and the special episodes. And
welcome to a great episode of
that's right,
the Written Well podcast.
I was under the understanding there would be no math involved with this writing podcast.
That's right. I did promise you. I'll do the math after the podcast is recorded. Simply sit there and be a writer.
Well, I'm excited for this one. We don't have any guests this week, but it allows us to get to the Writing to Market podcast episode.
Yeah, and I've had a number of people bugging me about when's this podcast going to come out. So as soon as this one's recorded, I'll try to get it up tomorrow. And it's not going to be the only one we do on market research. No. There is too much for just one podcast on market research. It's such an important thing. But it's going to be like an intro to market research podcast. And this is a thing that I've spent a lot of time on. Did you hear that noise?
Yes.
That is the cattle dog downstairs with his rubber chicken.
Nice. Because you're in Arizona right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah. Joy of working for yourself. I've been... relatives who have a beautiful home here in Arizona called us and said, "Hey, you want a dog sit?" And we were like, "Yeah," and piled our stuff in the car and came here for a week and a half. It's fantastic. We're taking the dogs for hikes in the desert every day and looking at rocks, and super cool.
Fantastic. Well, I took a 4-hour break today, and Bets and I went to the MIA, the Minneapolis Institute of Arts.
Oh, I love it there.
It's great, and it's free, and we just walked around, and we didn't plan it at all this time. We just went to the top and worked our way down. So it was like visiting old friends and discovering a few new ones.
Nice.
That's very cool.
And when we're going home, we don't know. They're back now. We went and just looked at old cars today and had some fun. It was great. So my background is a little strange compared to usual, recording on my laptop, but that worked fine for the holiday episode with your mom and sister. So
actually freaked out by the beam of angelic light in the background there.
Doesn't belong anywhere near me.
No, it does not. So I only have a few questions, but they're big ones. Okay. What is writing to market? That is question number 1.
I guess that is important. Start with define the thing you're talking about.
Correct.
It is the goal of writing to market is to write a book that there is a market already waiting for, that people want. If you are a mystery writer, what kind? And what kind of mystery should you be writing, and what does your audience want? The whole focus of writing to market is audience. If you have a vision, your audience doesn't care. Find out what your audience wants to read and write that thing. That's the essence of it. And we're going to talk more about your vision and why it's stupid.
I was actually thinking about this today. My question was, why write to market? And I thought about it, and it's really, it takes a long time to write a novel. And even the people who are pounding these things out, and there are people who are putting out, 40, 50 books a year. That still takes a week to write. And if you don't have a market and you then sell your book for, you sell $100 worth of that book you spent a month doing, that's not great. And most of us aren't pounding out a book a week or a book a month. So it's
the reasons to write to market depend on your goals, right? For some people, don't write to market. If you don't want people to, if you don't have one of the other 2 goals, write whatever you want. We don't care, right? I don't care if you want to write a journal about Batman. Do whatever you want. But you're either hoping to make money writing, or you really want a lot of people to read your stuff. Like I know a guy who's writing a book about depolarization in American politics. He doesn't care about the money. He wants a lot of people to read this book. He wants to contribute and help the situation. Good luck to him, but I'll help him however I can. And so that's fine if you want a lot of people to read your stuff. Or most of what we're going to talk about on this podcast and what we work on the website is making a living writing. And that really brings me to my,
and
to
that's not to say that you can't make a living not writing to market, but you have to get used to disappointment, because you're going to be writing 19 books for nobody before you hit 1 out of 20 that some people read. People have created their own markets. People create their own genres. That's why there's so many genres today, is because people have gone out and done it. But it is a frustrating long-term thing to try and do it that way.
And a million people have tried to create a genre, and there are like 12 genres. Your success rate's going to be very low.
It's very low.
Yeah, it's tough. If you're going to take that approach, you have to treat it as a hobby and know that you're just probably not going to ever make any money with it. Maybe you do, but if you want to create your own genre, do your own thing, not write to market, just don't. That's fine, but just don't count on ever making any money, because there's a very good chance you won't make any. And there's a very good chance you will never get the satisfaction of a bunch of people reading your stuff, which is another important part of it. So, what I have, I just should not miss this part from my notes. You have to change your definition of what is good. What is a good book? What is good writing? You have to let your arrogance go and give up on the idea that you're the person who decides what's good with no input from anyone else, because that is the problem. If you think you're the only person who judges what is good, then you're writing a book for you. And then why even publish it? You're just going to be disappointed when probably no one reads it. You write for an audience. Most people write for an audience, and that's what we talk about on the podcast, because you can't make a living if you don't have an audience. So writing to market is about writing books that people will read, that have a market, that are a thing people want. Otherwise you're just playing experimental jazz that no one wants to listen to. So, a furniture builder who spends...
I feel attacked. I feel directly attacked.
I don't consider anything that you've done experimental jazz. That's why we're still friends. A furniture builder who spends hours finely crafting designs and makes chairs no one wants to sit in. Like, good for you for doing your thing in your garage, but it's never going to be a self-supporting hobby when you're going to make money from. And with writing, people don't seem to understand this, that the audience matters. So many people think that this writing thing is like, oh, I just have to do the stuff that's in my head because what's in my head is so beautiful to me. Yeah, to you. So I think it's an arrogance thing, is a lot of it, and it certainly was for me, that I had to get past that and go, okay, I need to worry about what other people want to read if I want people to read my stuff. And selling is not the same as selling out. It just isn't. Writing books that people will read means that your creativity is being enjoyed by a lot of people. And if that means you have to create within specific parameters, fine. It's not that you're not creative anymore, that you're selling out. You're just finding ways to make sure that people want to read your stuff. And I think that's just, for a lot of very beginning writers, that's a really important lesson that will save them a lot of time and pain if they learn it now.
I am a big fan of limits, and I feel limits can really be a boon to creativity, because they force you to be creative about how you're using your space, how you're using your words. And so genre limits, word limits, I like writing these flash fiction and poetry, where I'm imposing these limits on stuff. And I've always said there's always infinite room for creativity in whatever kind of tight strictures you want to put on your story.
Absolutely. And I think it breeds creativity. There's a reason 99% of the time, haiku is better than freeform because haiku is fun to read and freeform poetry is almost always horrible. That structure, I think, makes me more creative for sure.
You're reading the wrong freeform poetry, but I've published both haiku and freeform poetry, so
Not reading freeform poetry is the key. I tried that once. We'll never make that mistake again.
Okay. I have a mission. I am going to find you some freeform shit you like because you have never read Charles Bukowski.
Oh, is Charles Bukowski freeform?
Oh yeah.
Oh, well, I like that stuff.
You were right. You were right. You were reading the wrong stuff.
All right.
Yeah. Beasts Bounding Through Time by Charles Bukowski is probably my favorite poem.
I went to college in a very I spent my college years in a very liberal town. I've read Bukowski.
All right. Well,
Dated
see,
girls who had Bukowski books, yeah, for sure.
see, there you go. See, you love freeform
Dated a
poetry
lot of art
as
schools.
long as it was written by a hard gambling drunk misogynist.
Poet. You said it. Wieston was a poet.
Anyway,
All right. So we're going to focus a lot on this podcast on the key being getting sales. But if you don't care about the money, but you do want an audience, these things all apply the same way. So when I talk about getting sales, you can just hear it as getting people to read your book. So you need the parts of a book that sell, right? And the biggest way to solve that puzzle is to do the market research, right? Your audience wants specific things. In nonfiction, you're writing to either solve a problem, right? Your writer had a problem, they want a solution, you're going to solve it for them, and that's self-help, educational, whatever. Or they're curious about a real thing, histories, biographies. Like that's the nonfiction market, and you're doing those two things. And so you have to look at, is this a history thing that people want to read about? If you're writing a piece of history that only 4 people care about, I hope that you enjoy the writing because you really are going to only sell it to those 4 people, no matter how well you write it. If you write a self-help book that doesn't solve problems, that doesn't solve a problem that's common, you're kind of wasting your time. You're not really helping anyone. In fiction categories, and we're going to talk. This is going to be the most common thing that we'll talk about in the podcast is genre fiction in market research. Your reader wants to read the same thing but different over and over. They want, if there were 30 Lord of the Rings books, you and I would have read 30 Lord of the Rings books. We might not have liked all of them, but we liked them, and we would have gone and read all 30 of them.
Well, I read the Lord of the Rings, and I read the Sword of Shannara books, and then I read a whole bunch of David Eddings. So,
yeah,
I did do that.
Anything that was close to it. Those are
I know. I like to think arrogantly. I'm not like that. I like new experimental stuff, and then I think about my reading history. I'm like, no, that's 100% true.
Yeah, I mean, I do go read new and experimental stuff, and then if I like it, I read 30 of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we all kind of do. So this is where, this is why we're writing the genre guides, the trope and cliches lists, the blueprints and story builders, all that stuff that's on the site is to give you those things that you must have, right? If you're writing a thriller, you must have a ticking clock. If we use that as an example, if you don't know that, you will write a thriller that no one will like. And then not only do you get very few sales, but even if you're an amazing marketer and have a great cover and description and get some sales, you'll then start to get terrible reviews. Your sales will plummet, and so will your self-worth. You'll be unhappy. So you have to have these things, and you're not limiting your creativity. What you're doing is writing appropriately for your genre and knowing which things have to be in there. There's certain beats that just have to be in every genre. Your reader wants them. We look at romance real quick, since it's the best-selling category for independent authors. Romance readers want interesting characters that have tension. There's a reason they can't be together. There has to be a sacrifice to make it happen. So will they or won't they? And you're thinking, if you're not a romance reader, of course they will. But whatever your favorite genre fiction is, that's how everybody thinks about your genre too. There's a ticking clock in your thriller? Well, obviously the guy's going to beat the clock, unless it's an Adam Stempel book, in which case everyone might be slaughtered. But
Well, the thing about tropes is also that once you're confident enough with them, and once once your audience trusts you with them, you can twist them as long as you twist them with a knowledge that you're doing that, and you kind of let the reader in on the gag. They know that you know the trope and you're twisting it intentionally. What
Yep.
they don't want is the moment where you miss a trope so badly that they throw the book across the room. Because I have read some books from people who are fabulous writers in other genres and switched to a different genre. And I read widely in different genres. So as a reader, I'm very familiar with a lot of the different tropes. And it was like very clear a couple of times that these writers really don't know the new genre that they've picked. And they're just kind of out on a lark. And it's a little bit insulting as a reader to have someone come into your genre that you've read 100 books in, and they're like, I'm such a great writer, I will write in this genre now. And you go, no, you missed it so hard.
Mhm.
And that's what you're trying to avoid.
And if we look at romance, like in the will they or won't they, of course they will. But you
It's
have
a
to
romance.
convince the reader that they might not. And that seems when you're writing it and you're the author and you're thinking, well, but the reader knows they will. Don't worry. They want desperately to be convinced that they might not. And they're just gonna let you convince them, right? They're not gonna they don't think about it that way. And if you think you're different, tell me that you don't get excited during an action movie or a thriller
Oh,
scene,
yeah.
whatever it is. Everybody's like that, right? And so in romance, they make whatever the sacrifice is, they solve the problem, and then there's a happily ever after or a happily for now, whatever it is. These parts are not negotiable in a romance. They are in every top 100 romance novel. That's part of, if you're not using those, you're not writing a romance. You're writing some other thing. So, on the site, we broke down every genre with genre guides, but you're still going to need to do market research on your own. So read the top 10 sellers in your genre. What we're talking about is defining your audience. Like what are the books that work here? What does my audience want, right? So you go read the top 10 sellers in your genre. Then you go read the top 10 from independent authors. Then you go read the classics. If you're not an excited reader in a genre, you can't write in it. It's not going to work. It just isn't. You can lie to yourself about it, but you're going to fail. You have to have read a bunch of stuff in your genre. And then you need that list of necessary tropes, and you can make it yourself, or you can use ours, or you can Google it or whatever, but you need that list of necessary tropes that your readers want.
One of the things I just recently put in the list of, I think it was historical fantasies. And one of it was, you should maybe not try this fantasy, try writing historical fantasy if you think that putting magic in your history book, your historical fiction, will make it sell better. Because that's not a reason to jump genres. You want it to sell, but you also need to be a fan of that knowledge, of that genre, because being a fan breeds knowledge, and it breeds a deeper understanding of the genre.
Absolutely. We've got our list of cliches as well. So when you read these top 10 books in your genre, top 10 books from independent authors, and the classics, go to the reviews, click on sort by worst, and read a bunch of the worst reviews and see what those people complain about. Those are the cliches. Tropes are the things your readers want. Cliches are the things they don't. And you want to find those cliches and know how to avoid them. We've talked about them on recent podcasts, a couple of the cliches that just aren't very, that people don't want to hear about. Find those cliches, and we have them listed on the website as well, but find those cliches and make sure they're not in there. That helps you not make mistakes. So we have more information just by looking at Amazon than a major publisher had 20 years ago. They didn't know all this stuff. We can have so much more information than they have. At this point, I can write a book for Stephen King readers better than Stephen King can, because he's not doing this research. Now, I'm not, since my name isn't Stephen King, I'm not going to sell as many as he is. But if I did that genre research, I could certainly do that and do the Stephen King thing and figure out what his readers want. And it's super easy because we have all this information on Amazon. So and then to find the independently published books, and I just did a video. I'm doing videos for all the market research for each of the genres, and I did the video for fantasy, and I looked at how to find the independently published books. The biggest way is to look at the ones that are in Kindle Unlimited. 90% of the time, if it's in Kindle Unlimited and it's in the top 100 list, it's an independent author.
Yep.
The major publishers don't put those in there. And then you can go look at the you scroll down a little bit and you see all the publication information. You'll see the publication date, you'll see a publisher. If there's no publisher listed, it's self-published. If the publisher listed is the name of the author, it's self-published. Yeah, it's easy. You'll find the top 10 independently published books in the genre very quickly in that top 100 list, and we have links to all those top 100 lists, so you can just go find them yourself, because things do change.
I feel like we're mentioning the website a lot this episode, so we should talk about that just briefly, so people don't go, "What website? Where's the website?" Because the website is not done yet. We should be clear about that.
Yes. We will be launching a website to teach people self-publishing as kind of a branching out of this podcast, and it'll be, I think it'll be in a few months. It's coming along quick.
Should be springish, summerish.
Yeah.
No math.
Right.
I can't estimate, because that would involve math. But
and also knowing when it is right now. Something you often
difficult.
Don't have.
I know it's cold. I suspect it's winter. But other than that, I feel like I will be in trouble soon. That usually means it's Valentine's Day.
Yeah, you've got
past Valentine's Day.
You've got 6 days to get out of trouble. So.
But
there are tools you can use. Publisher Rocket is pretty good for finding categories and genres and subgenres. You start by figuring out what genre you want to write in, and that's often genres, one of the genres that you read a lot and I think you want to write in. And then you go do this research, find out what are the top books in this thing. Are they books like, do I want to write books like this? Because you may be, between a couple things. Do I want to write cyberpunk or hard sci-fi or whatever? And then you go look at hard sci-fi and go, oh, all these books now are, I don't know with hard sci-fi this week. It's been changing a bunch lately, but you might look at them and go, oh, these are all cowboy and space books now. I don't want to write that. And that may change what you write. But you have to go do this research, and you should be compiling a ton of notes. So every one of these books that you read that are these top 10 books, pile up notes. What do they have in them? What tropes? What do they do? How does the story work? How many characters are there? Break down all these things. That's how you end up being successful. And it sounds like a lot of work, but we write in series. So you're really doing this research for, say 9 books. Say you're going to write 9 books. Well, do a week's worth of research so you don't write 9 books that are wasted, or get 4 books in and realize you should have done some research and now you have to start over with a different series. I mean, this is an ounce of inch and pound to cure thing.
Here's another thing to point out, because most people, a lot of people listening to this podcast are probably not written a book yet, or think they're going to write a book, or looking for a book. And so you're tempted to write the book and then find out what genre it is, which frankly was the old way to do it. The traditional publishing way was always to say, I will write the book, and then the publisher will tell me what genre it is. Because genres were a way to know where to shelf the book. That's really all they were. But as an independent author, you're the book publisher now, so you need to know where to shelf the book. So it can seem like, well, I have this idea for a book, but it's not going to sell. What do I do? Well, most writers will tell you that, quite frankly, the idea is the easy part. Most writers have more ideas for books than they can possibly write in 100 lifetimes. Okay, so get used to the idea of going, well, that book won't sell, or that book is too long, or I can't do that as a series, and move on to the next idea. I got a whole whiteboard full of ideas that, and some of them I won't write. just for a variety of reasons. When I wrote my very first novel, I had about 4 or 5 ideas for books. And I went with the one I did for specific reasons. And market concerns are definitely a legitimate reason for picking one idea over another. So you could do market research on the idea you already have for your book, but if it looks grim, come up with another idea. It's not that hard.
Yeah, just twist your idea around. Look at,
Yeah.
And it's an important aspect of market research to not only figure out what your audience wants, but if there's enough audience there for what you want to do. There's a bunch of tools for that. Publisher Rocket is a pretty good one. You can also, when you're looking at these genres, and you're looking at these top books, how many sales do they have? How many reviews do they have? How well is this book really doing? Publisher Rocket will tell me approximately how many sales per day it takes to get to number 1 or number 10 on the list for a given category. So to find your genre, subgenre, what you're going to really find is categories. And that's going to help you do your market research. So if you're into Western sci-fi books, since I talked about those, you go find the subgenre that fits those. You search for those, and you can see categories. So you can actually search for Western science fiction, or science fiction Western, on Amazon. If you don't have Publisher Rocket or one of these other tools, just do this search on Amazon. Find books that are books like what you want to write, and then go look in the just 10 lines below where the publisher would be. There's also the categories that it's in. And you can go look at, what categories are all these books in, and you can find your category. Go look at the bestsellers in that category, look at all those books, and then
just by clicking on the category link. So the category listings will be links.
Yeah.
You click on that and it'll give you the top 100 bestsellers in that category.
Yep.
It'll give you the subcategories of that as well on the left side.
And then you see, and you can also Google it and find, there are various calculator tools that mostly are not very accurate, but will give you some idea. If a book is number 12 in this thing, it will also say what its rank is in the Amazon bestseller overall. And so you might find a book that is number 300,000, and you look it up and you find that, oh, okay, it's selling 4 copies a day. Well, do the math for yourself. If you're going to make $2.50 a book, that's $10 a day. You want to make $10 a day, right, per book in this genre? Can you be the number 10 book that's selling this many? Those, you can do that research and see that, maybe this genre isn't the one. Maybe this one's too hard. Or conversely, I'm just going to write a standard thriller. I'm just going to be David Baldacci. Well, good luck getting onto the bestseller list on that, because the number 100 book might be selling 100 books a day.
That's it.
You're just never going to get there.
Tough one to crack. I
did get the
number 1 new release on that with my thriller.
Yeah, well, and you put a lot of work into that, and you do a lot more about self-publishing than most people do.
But I knew when I was writing a thriller, I'm like, oh, this is a tough nut to crack. Like, number 1, you had to be selling something like, I think, 2,200 books a day to crack the number 1 bestseller thriller list.
Yep. Whereas when I wrote my
drilled down to a lot of subcategories there.
Yeah. When I wrote my last poker book, I knew that, if I sell, 30 copies a day, I'm going to be number 1. And then the one time in the last 6 years I wouldn't have been number 1 was when I launched, and like the next day, an actual New York Times bestseller launch that happened to be in the poker category and killed me. And I was number 2 for a long time. And if you can't tell, I'm still salty about it.
Yeah. So let's do a brief sum up of where we're at with writing to market. Writing to market is discovering profitable markets and what goes into the profitable genres and subgenres, and figuring out what those books are like, what tropes people expect and what cliches they want to avoid. And then finding those books and becoming familiar both with the current trad publishing bestsellers, the independent publishing bestsellers, and some of the classics in the field. And this is all a prep for writing. This is to understand the genre.
That's right.
And then for finding tropes and cliches, you're looking at the reviews, both the best reviews and the worst reviews, and taking notes of what people like and what they don't like. And that'll start to give you a shape of what your story should contain, or more like what your story needs to contain and needs to avoid to resonate with this group of readers.
That's right. And it's a very small percentage of the words you write that are going to be where these things are going to be required, right? It's not limiting your creativity significantly to include these things.
And also, these things can be very genre dependent. Romance is a very restrictive genre, and they have really very tight trope restrictions, both from the readers and the writers. And
you're going to get us a bunch of bad fan mail.
No, it's not. I'm not saying it as an insult. I'm saying
no, but you're going to get a bunch of people, because there are 1,000 romance genres now. And I already thought about it when I was talking about romance earlier. There's going to be a bunch of people who say, "Oh no, in these 12 subgenres, you don't have to have a happily ever after. You don't have that." Or in these 14 subgenres,
there's going to be exceptions to everything. But I mean, it's going to be genre and subgenre and subgenre.
That's true.
If you're doing shifter romance, you have to have an alpha male in the shifter pack, and you can't use you need apex predators, and just
as we learned from Lyda Morehouse.
Yeah, exactly. And a variety of different things. So it's, and some genres, I mean, like, magical realism doesn't have a lot of restrictive tropes. You know what I mean? Some of the really more limited literary genres, but they have their own as well. But it is, everything we talk about here is genre dependent, and it changes between the different genres, which is why you have to go and do the research and do it yourself. And it changes and it shifts, and you want to keep on top of that.
Absolutely.
But if you hit one of these things, I mean, some of these book series are 20 books long. 20, 25 books that people have read, and they've changed and they've been creative. And, once you get into, 15, 16 books, well, you can start making the tropes yourself, because you're there. If you have a readership for, who have followed you 15, 16 books, they're going to follow you the rest of the way. You're not going to throw them off.
The next Jack Reacher book that comes out, I'm reading it. Around that number 24 or something.
I am not. Did you read the one that he wrote with his son?
Yes.
It
wasn't as good, and I'll read the next one anyway.
It hurt me so hard. There was a fight where he put his arms out and spun in a circle. Okay, that is not a legitimate technique.
I probably fast forwarded through that.
Yeah, you must have, because I was like, oh, you got to be freaking kidding.
The Zangief from Street Fighter.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was, and for a book that really has always been prided itself on good technical fight scenes, it was rough sledding.
All right, well,
and I'm not one to begrudge someone who writes with their parents.
I mean, I think this kind of illustrates my point. You're pointing out just how this book was a complete fail, and I'm telling you, I know I'm gonna read the next one.
You're gonna read the next one anyway, yeah.
Because we're 20-something books into these things, and I'm just gonna read it.
Yeah, he even tried to kill Reacher, and just was like, I'll bring him back.
Yeah. And we should be clear when we're talking about genres. Genres and categories might not be exactly the same thing. But when you're doing genre research, what you're really doing is category research, because that's how you're going to find these top 100 lists. They're in categories and subcategories. That's how you're going to find these top 10 independent authors and top 10 traditional and top, the classics and all these things. You're going to find those in categories rather than in genres. So genres, it's almost an old term at this point, although people still use it. But categories are going to be where you find your information.
They're pretty much they're just interchangeable.
Fairly,
the terms are pretty much the same.
So that's how you're going to do your research, and then write this stuff down. We have already piled up a ton of this information that makes things easier, but you don't have to join the website to enjoy the podcast. So and really doing the information yourself on top of whatever we give you is that much better. And so when you go through these, say we do the top 10 independent published books, which is what I just went through in the video I created the other day for each genre. You go through and look at this independent published book, right? It's number 6 on the Amazon bestseller list for this category. So not only are you going to write down the things that happen in this book, and I want to you look at word count, anything you don't already know for sure about the genre, start writing it down. Keep notes, right? These notes are going to be what help you create your book. So you're looking at word counts. You're looking at the kind of words that people are using. What grade level is this written for? Like, are these, the Jack Reacher books are, they're probably at like an 8th grade reading level or something, because that's what like a typical adult genre fiction book is these days. Or is it, is it a Cormac McCarthy book where it's like a much higher reading level, and there's vocabulary stuff that you're going to have to know, and what is the feel of the book, and how many characters are there, and is there always one main character? And you want to know all these things. And you're also going to write down, take a screenshot of the cover if you're reading it digitally, or keep the book nearby so you have these covers, because you can
come back to that
research while you're at this. You can do your blurb research and description research while you're doing this stuff, and you should be writing those things down as well. Learn all about these books and what is selling these books to their audience, as well as what's inside them.
I want to give everyone a little pro tip as well. Give a lot more weight to a book that's number 12 but is a year old than a book that's number 2 but came out 2 days ago.
That's a fact, and that's an important point.
They update these lists, I believe, every hour. Mm-hmm. And a book that had a bunch of pre-sale is going to pop on that list really hard, because they're going to drop all those books on the first day, and it's going to pop hard, and it's going to sell a bunch during that first month. So that's going to make it higher. But if you have books that are still in the top 50 after a year or two, that's a genre definer right there. That's a big book.
And I would say any book that's older than 31 days.
Yeah. Well,
there's just a big drop off in the Amazon algorithm after your 31 days. And if you're still on the top 100 list as an independent author after 31 days, you're doing a lot of things right. And then after a year, then you're really hitting it, because after a year, you're probably not doing like BookBub deals and all those kinds of stuff. After
right. You're just
real staying power.
You're just selling.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
go ahead.
Sure you look at everything about these books to figure out what your book needs to have. And then, you may only end up defining 10% of your book this way. The other 90% is you being creative, making it great, doing all the right things. But this 10% has got to be there. Nobody's going to buy your book. And this is how you break down this information that we didn't have 20 years ago, and we have access to now. And without this information, and if you're not doing all this stuff, the authors who are doing this stuff are going to kick your ass. Nobody's going to see your book.
It's a very crowded field.
It really is.
Very hard to make noise. But that doesn't mean you can't do it.
And this is why picking a genre can be important, and learning about the categories your book can go in. Because if you're just writing, if you just think I'm just going to write a generic thriller and I'm never going to crack the top 100, and that's that. If you look at subcategories, dive down into more specific things that your book might fit into. You can be in up to 10 categories on Amazon.
Yep.
You can find some categories where you will make those lists, and being on those lists gets you sales. As soon as you hit that top 100 list, you start getting some more sales because people look at those lists. And as soon as you hit the top 50, you've got a shot at being included in those emails that Amazon sends out. If you're in the top 50 of a category, Amazon may send emails to people who like your kind of book and sell your book for you. And those things can be huge for you. So picking your subcategories can be really helpful in getting on one list and then you can actually, you can get onto this list, which gets you a few more sales, which gets you onto this next list that you're in this category as well, which gets you some more sales, which gets you onto the big list. I mean, you can use that to end up with a ton more book sales if you plan that out correctly. But if you wrote the wrong book, it's not going to pop in one of those categories.
There's some parallels in the crowdedness of the field, from our poker days, because we kind of started right towards the end of the online poker boom. And I don't know if any of the listeners know about online poker, but when it first came out, if you knew anything about poker, it was an absolute killing fields. I turned $100 that no, it was $50, 50 bonus dollars that they gave me. So it wasn't even my money. I turned it into $10,000 in 6 months. And you could not do that now in online poker. But you can still make money doing it. It just takes a lot more work, and you need to know more, and you need to be more. Like Blaze Ward last week, you got to want it more than other people. It is a crowded business, and
I when the Hold'em games started to get tougher, I switched to other games. Just like picking your genre correctly. I mean, you just go, picking your categories correctly is about finding soft fields sometimes.
And I immediately became a 7-stud high-low expert, which no one ever plays.
Adam,
but it eventually helped you win a championship. So
Adam is the third best stud high-low player in the world, and he's also the third worst stud high-low player in the world because there are only 6.
That's right. And of all 6, I'm the least well known.
That's right.
The 6 are like, who's the number 3 guy? Does anyone know the number 3 guy?
Adam is his name? I never heard of him.
Who the hell is that guy?
Yeah. Luckily,
the tournament winnings.
Luckily, numbers 4, 5, and 6 have no idea about the list.
That's right.
I think all 3 of them think that they're the number 1. So, talk to me about when you did genre research for the thriller, and what you did and what you didn't do and what you should have done differently.
Okay, what I did for that, I went about it the wrong way, of course, because I enjoy doing that, but also I'm a unique fellow, and and also, I like to make money, but it is frankly not my prime motivator. So I'm very invested in the artistic side of things, and I mean playing music and writing novels and stuff like that. I mean, I monetize all of it, but I go about some of it ass backwards just because that's how I'm wired. So I had this idea for a thriller, and I wrote it, and then I looked at the thriller category, and I was like, wow, that's a really hard nut to crack. But what I did is I aggressively picked some subcategories. And as soon as it came out, I had some good subcategories that I loaded up into Amazon so that I could, and I did hit number 1 in one of those, but it didn't hold long enough for Amazon to give me the orange banner.
Oh,
I know, it's annoying. I've done that. I've had that happen twice now, where I'm like, I saw it, it said number 1, and they're like, yeah, but then you drop back to number 2. I'm like, thanks. So, it's number 2 for.
Gotta get a screenshot of that banner as soon as it hits 2.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, I got a couple of them, but
yeah,
and number 1 new release. So, and it was a good. Every book launch I've had has been better than the last one. I got a bigger email list. I'm better at being, me and at structure and tasks. And for those who don't know, I have severe to moderate and so far unmedicatable ADHD. So the difficulty to do a good book launch is a lot about doing tasks, a bunch of different tasks in a specific order. That's not really what I'm good at, but I did a nice job with this. I had a launch plan, stuck with it, used my email list, used some targeted ads, did some BookBub stuff, had a good launch, and
Also, there's some things you
well.
did really well in that your description was great for the category,
Yep.
because after you'd written the book, you knew a lot more about category research than you did at the
Yeah.
start. You'd learned some things over that
And
time, and you
yeah,
went
and
and
the
looked at
blurb.
the descriptions, and you wrote a great description, and then you created a cover that looks like the thriller category. That's a very thrillery
Yep.
cover, and you did a bunch of stuff right.
Yeah. The other thing I did was I changed the description, because one of the things I have three main characters in the book. I will not guarantee you that they all make it to the end. But one of them is a very strong woman character. And I was really excited about that. And I did a lot of research terms for terms on strong female protagonists and this and that. And I targeted a bunch of those. And it did not work. There is apparently I've written a very male focused, as well as the horror thriller category is also very male focused. And I wasn't selling to women. So
And
I
um,
switched.
something that everybody should know, in many genres, the majority of the readers of that genre want to either read from a specific gender author, or from a gender author of their own gender.
Yep.
They're in certain, like in literary fiction, men don't read women. They just don't. In erotica, women never read stuff written by men. They just don't. And some places that's just how it is.
Thriller's a bit like that. So I switched my description to focus on the male lead, who's and it really either one of them could be the true protagonist. They really share screen time completely, but I wanted to focus on the woman character. I find her fascinating. I think she's well written, and was excited for that. And it failed, so I pivoted. And that's the beauty of self-publishing, is you can pivot with that stuff, and you get immediate data, or far more immediate than I ever got as a traditionally published author. So you can pivot. So keep an eye on stuff and go, okay, why aren't these converting? If I'm getting clicks, why aren't they turning into sales? And tweak something and see if it works, and keep tweaking it until those clicks are converting at an acceptable rate.
Yeah, think of the number of authors, very likely including you, who had a couple books with just the wrong descriptions written for the wrong time by the publisher. They print up a run of books, and then if that doesn't work out, they go, this guy doesn't sell books.
Oh yeah, I've had books that have
Your
been
your cover and
turned in,
description
sold,
didn't sell
and
books.
then they've been published, and in the time between them being done and being published, the editor of that book has been fired or quit. So now it's a freaking orphan
Right.
there. And the new editor is like, oh, I'll for sure, service the authors who were before. No, it's like new coach of a team coming in. They want their own people. Which I don't blame them, but the turnover is big. And, I've been caught in a couple of those where it's rough. And then your book's just out there with no one doing anything about it.
And self-publishing, you just don't have that problem.
Yeah. Yeah. On the other hand, you have to do all that every time.
That's right.
It is always on you. So it's always like anything. There's a new set of challenges. There's stuff that's good, there's stuff that's bad in any pursuit. And if you think being a self-published is any easier than being traditionally published, it's not. It's differently challenging. I've found it very rewarding. I enjoy so much. After 9 traditionally published novels and a whole bunch of other traditionally published stuff, songbooks and picture books and graphic novels, just a ton of stuff. The information that I can get about my own books and how they're performing, and the different data points that I can look at in real time, is astounding. And
what I like most about self-publishing was telling a traditional publisher to go to hell and not email me anymore because his offer was unacceptable, and publishing it myself and making money. that that just like we wouldn't have had a choice.
Yeah.
Even
With
10 years before, we
with
wouldn't.
with the first poker book we did, that was I knew that would happen because I know about how you do math and how you figure things, and I'm like, oh yeah, when he takes a look at a traditional publishing contract, there's no way. But again, we in a way we'd done our market research because we were running a poker training site, so we already knew, we're like, look, 90% of our students are going to buy this book.
We knew what people wanted because we were talking to them all the time.
Every day we were talking to them about what they needed to learn, and we put it all in there. So I mean, there was really no risk in having a bunch of books printed, and because we knew we were going to sell at least X amount, and then whatever happened in the wider world. So I mean, that was as far as non-risky publishing, self-publishing back in the day when there was no print on demand. I mean, that was solid.
Yeah, I mean, almost everybody back then lost money on self-published books. We were very rare in not only making money, but in knowing we were going to make money.
Yeah, and when you have that, there's no sense then in going to the traditional publishers like, well, I'll give you 20 cents a book, but you don't have to do anything else. Like, or I can do everything, and we can split $36 a book. I don't see how you're gonna, improve this by what, 3,600, whatever this deal is.
I forget when I ran the numbers what we would have had to have sold. I think we needed to sell 85,000 books.
I'm not sure there was enough. There was not enough paper to sell this many books to make up
to destroy the planet's rainforests.
Yeah.
To make as much as we were going to make selling out the 4,000 we ordered.
That's right.
2,000 we ordered. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was absurd. And there are great. Some people make a pile of money traditional publishing, but you just don't have to worry about it in
well, like I said, I have had.
You don't have to do it yourself. We talk about doing it all yourself because we want to teach you how to do it all. Because if you want to learn how to do a particular thing, we should be teaching you how to do it. But you don't have to make your own cover. There's a ton of pre-made covers. If you just search for pre-made book covers, you'll find just piles and piles and piles of them. And for $100, you'll find a great one.
And there's great artists out there who are doing it. I mean, there's people doing maps for fantasy books that you can hire. There's, you can hire copy editor, you can hire line editor, you can hire, developmental edits. It's all out there. And far fewer of them are a scam than it used to be.
Yeah.
A developmental editor for a self-published book 20 years ago was just the front guy for the vanity publishing they were going to try and sell you next.
Absolutely.
And now you've got legitimate great authors and editors selling their services online who do great work. I follow a bunch of them on Twitter.
And then you can actually find people who can help you with your blurbs, with your descriptions, with all those things. And then realistically, that's one of the things the site is going to provide is a bunch of this stuff so that you don't have to do it all. We're going to teach you how to do it all, but we're also we'll have a list of the best places to buy pre-made covers. We'll have a list of these tropes and cliches so that if you don't want to go through and read every book in the genre right now, we've got a list of these things, or you can check our lists to make sure you didn't miss any on your way through, to save all that time.
Or if you're thinking about 3 different genres, you can take a look at that, and instead of reading 30 books, you can read our info, and then you'd still want to dive in yourself. I mean, self-publishing is self-publishing. It is all on you, and there's no shortcuts. I mean,
except for the shortcuts we're talking about.
Yeah,
except for those.
But you still got to write the book.
That's true. You do have to write currently. We'll see how long that lasts.
I'm not looking forward to I for one welcome our robot overlords.
I'm sure they're listening. I just played around with Bard yesterday. That's Google's AI that just launched. And what happened was ChatGPT launched, and everybody, this became a big deal. And it's pretty clear with Google launching soon after this thing, after everybody started predicting the demise of Google, that Google was planning this thing and they just launched it a little early. They were like, oh crap, get it out there.
Yeah, get it out there. Yeah.
It's quite good. It is better than ChatGPT. I bought Google stock today. But it's not close to writing good books.
No.
None of this stuff is close to writing good books. Some of the shortcuts like Grammarly or writing Pro Writing Aid or all those things are awesome. Like that's really good use of an AI to tell you, hey, check this thing. Is this actually good? That's really valuable stuff. And make your life much easier. Maybe you don't need a copy editor if you've got a little bit of copy editing skill yourself and you've got these tools you can use. So it doesn't have to be that you have to feel like you have to do everything. There's a bunch of ways you can get help and not have to do everything, but you do have to be in charge of the project. I think that's the big key is you got to be the director of your project, and then you got to do most of the writing yourself, and you can get help with all the other stuff. But if you do it all yourself, you don't spend any money. So that's kind of why we do it all ourselves, because I don't want to buy a pre-made cover. I can make a great cover. I know what I want on the cover.
We're cheap. What can you do?
I think I'm a perfectionist, and I'm the only person.
Also, yeah, but and when it's your name on the book, I mean that's important. You can't slack off and say, well, I think this will be okay if I just don't watch over this process. It won't be. As we've learned, you can't just farm stuff out and then pay no more attention to it. You got to keep checking in and make sure shit is getting done.
So I feel like that covers the basics of market research, but I wish there was a way I could give people a little more, a straight process, and there's just too much there to just go, here's your 4-step process to market research. I mean, I can, but I'm going to be oversimplifying everything to do that. But it really is take all the things we've talked about that you use to learn about your categories and subcategories. Pick your category, subcategory, learn about your category and subcategory and what needs to go where. Learn about covers, titles, descriptions, and then write a book that does all those things and make it not suck.
And when we're talking categories and subcategories, we want you to pick 10 of them, because you're going to want a chance to chart in any of those 10. So you want to pick
challenging. It can be challenging to get 10 because you don't want to put yourself in categories where you get negative reviews.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the wrong category and you get some,
you have a maximum of 10. So pick up to 10 that do apply to your book.
Yeah. And you will find at least 4. I mean, I found 4 for a poker book.
Yeah.
Like you will find at least 4. And in genre fiction, you'll probably find more than that.
Oh, for sure. Especially if I mean, I work in some of the corners. So when my book is, I've got books that are, horror, dark fantasy, thriller, there are, I mean, I can go 3 or 4 deep in major categories, before I even start drilling down.
If you start in a big category
now. Yeah. Regional categories are a great place for charting right now. That may change very quickly, but I mean, U.S. horror been doing very well with the thriller books in there.
And then I think it's really valuable to compile that information and then write your book. And if you're writing like many authors do, we learned from Blazeward that not all of them do, and Adam lied to me. If you're writing like many authors do, where you write a very rough draft and you do a lot of revision, once you write your rough draft, go back, and part of your revision process should be, does this have all the things that belong in this genre, and compare it to books that are in the genre. If you're using something like a 3-act, then go look at the other books that you read. They may have 3-act things in them, And is your pacing like theirs? Is your, are things happening in the way that they're supposed to? And are all the things in the book that you had in your notes that go in this genre? By the time you've written your book, you probably know more about the genre. Is all the stuff in there that's supposed to be in there? Is there anything that's not supposed to be there that's there? Do a check over before you then go rewrite the book and then get your cover and all that stuff done.
And the other thing is hold on to all your genre notes, because you'll be using them in your launch strategy and in your marketing strategy and in your advertising strategy as well.
And in the next 8 books.
Yeah, it's like writing to market and then market the writing. You're using that same information.
Look at you with the clever wordplay. That was nice.
I write a few words in my time.
Did you work your plan and plan your work there?
That's right. Well, teamwork makes the dream work.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
People keep telling me that, and I keep telling them, go to hell. Leave me.
Go to hell. There's no I in team, but there is one in win, and there's a U in suck.
I'll be using that as a soundbite in future podcasts.
Excellent. Because I think, maybe not the next podcast, but when we revisit writing to market, we'll talk about, once using all that information, once you finish the book, to help direct your marketing efforts.
And it's also
silly to use all that going in and not use any of it going out, because it'll be wasted effort at that point.
And you should also be thinking about the entire series. Most genre fiction that you're going to be self-publishing is going to be writing in a series. It's just much more valuable to do it that way. Trust us on this if you haven't heard us talk about why. But if you are going to write, a 9-book fantasy series, your pauper farmer in the first book probably shouldn't become king by the end of the first book. Maybe you could make it work that way, but if that's not how your genre works, maybe you want to plan out the 9 books a little bit. You can throw the plan out later. You're probably gonna, but it'll keep you on some sort of plan. And so maybe that in the first book that this doesn't happen, and then in the first book he's making the journey across the continent to be in the same city as where the kings are crowned, because he has to go there for some reason, and like by book 6 he becomes the king or whatever. If you've got that kind of plan and that's how your genre works, then you use this market research not only for your book, but you use it for your whole series.
And again, series genre dependent. You want to know the tolerance for cliffhangers of your readers. Some genres love a cliffhanger, some hate it.
That's right.
Most common is it's kind of what the Lord of the Rings movies did. If you notice, every movie ends with them winning, except in the first 2, there's a but at the end of it. I mean, they have a success, and then, but this is still going on.
Right.
So that's how you still get that satisfying arc in a genre that wants the farmer to become king at the end of the book. You still need them to accomplish and grow, but there's still more to be done. And that's how a series works. You still need to. I actually look at entire writing this way. I've always done this with songwriting, with poetry, with prose. I look at circles. In that, I want the perfect word in the perfect sentence, in the perfect paragraph, in the perfect scene, in the perfect chapter, in the perfect volume, in the perfect book in the series, in the perfect series, which fits into my greater universe. You're really trying to make everything fit together in that way. You never accomplish it, but that's how I look at most art. It's the micro and the macro, and it's all, and it's all it's a fractal. It's all the same. It's the same thing you're trying to do in a haiku as you're trying to do in a novel, but there's different, you use different tools. I actually had to adjust that when I was tried to write novels, because my problem was actually that I was really good at sewing up a scene, because I needed every bit to have a beginning and end. And what that does, if you're writing a short story, that's great. because you've written this perfect sphere of a short story that is perfectly round. But, you know, sometimes writing is about momentum, especially if when you're trying to crank out 90 to 100,000 words. So I'd write this perfect scene and I'd end it perfectly. And so every time I sat down to write, I had to gather up all the momentum to get going again. And I learned in a novel, it's actually better if you leave things a little open at the end of these scenes. You have, so it's always leading into the next one. So you're not trying to tie everything up so perfectly. You're trying to lead into the next one. And that allowed me to actually write novels. But I was from a songwriting background where it's very important to have, you know, it's a very strict structure and everything needs to sew up.
I learned a lot about writing series in some of the research I did, and it's interesting how so many of the best sellers that talk about writing in series, they'll talk about you must deliver on your promises, and when you tell what you're essentially telling a reader is, here are the questions. I know you're fascinated, and I promise I will answer them.
Yeah,
you do not. You must answer them by the end of the book. But if you're writing in a series, you must pose more questions toward the end of that book.
Yeah,
or people will not go read the next one. You know, and some authors can wrap up a book completely, and people will read the next one in the series because the first book was good, and they're not really like a series. The Hannibal books are a good example of that. Everything's wrapped up at the end of every book, but people read the next one because they're just great, and they just happen to be the same characters.
But you don't want to count on that.
Yeah.
Never count on your own greatness to carry you through.
That's right.
Because most likely it's not greatness, it's hubris.
Right. And those books are just barely a series. They're just kind of like in the same world, and like a couple of characters from one will be in another one. But there's barely a series. If you're really doing a flowing series, you've got to put some questions at the end of that book for the next one and keep the whole thing going so that it's a wave and not like we were talking about with the chapters. You're not just clunk.
Close it completely off and expect people to come and start it up with you again.
Yeah. My old buddy Moses Oakland, the blues player, we were playing on a blues jam one night, and he said, "Boy, that solo was real good." And I said, "Thanks." And he said, it was a little too much." I was like, "Too much?" And he said, "You got to leave them wanting more. If you don't leave them wanting more, they won't come back next week. You leave them wanting more, we'll be back here every week for a year." And he was right. He was so right. You got to leave them wanting a little bit more. Don't show them all your cards right then. And that's for sure true when writing in a series. So you got to kind of plan that out, and you got to know how your genre handles that.
Well, all right. I think we're good.
Yeah, I think
there's a lot more to cover in writing to market, but this is a good intro to it.
Yeah, I mean, we could dive down into it so much, into the minutia of, the video I made last week was just about covers and the research and looking at the top 100 in real quick and seeing what the books have in similarities, and that would be worth an entire podcast episode just by itself.
Here we're talking about market research on the website. We're actually trying to teach it, so we've got visual aids and charts and shit to try
and links to the stuff.
Yeah,
when you go to our genre guide for thrillers, it's got a link to the top 100, and then you got each of the subgenres in thrillers and a link to the top 100 in those. So you can just go right to Amazon and start your research from there. And it's got a big list of genres and a big list of tropes and, or cliches and all those things. So, here we're just talking about what it is and how to do it for yourself. But, there's a lot of tools out there to help you use it. We're going to present some of them. And it's a little bit of a challenge talking about the website now. And not like I hate selling things. I'm staying with a guy who's an amazing salesman, and I told him, he said, "You'd be a great sales guy. I'd hire you to work for me. You'd make a ton of money." And I said, "I know, and I hate it. I don't like selling things." So I feel like I
still do it because you're good at it. When I was I booked the Tim Alloys for about a week, and I came to the guys. I said, "Look, hate doing this, and I'm terrible at it. If one of those things wasn't true, I would continue on. But there's no reason, since I hate it and I'm bad at it.
And since I don't enjoy selling, right, especially selling myself, I mean, I could have a lot more poker students. I could have a lot of things if I wanted to sell myself more. I hate doing it. It's weird to talk about the website so much, but this episode has pointed out to me how important it is to have those tools, because I keep talking about this thing we're going to have on the website that's going to be so great to solve this problem, right? And so I guess we just have to like get comfortable talking about the website. I don't want the podcast to turn into we constantly just tell you how great the website is, because there are podcasts like that and I don't listen to them. I hate them.
The idea is to actually share information regardless of the website. But we're talking a lot about the website because it's getting to some technical stuff with the writing to market. But I got to tell you, I've been working this last week on the fantasy genre guide stuff, which is just gigantic because there's so many subgenres that are so wildly different. I mean, some of the main genres, even the subgenres, are mostly, most of the tropes and cliches are the same. But for me, fantasy there's just wild differences between them. So I'm doing practically full genre guides for all of the subgenres as well, and it's just it's super fun. And it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of writing about writing, which as you know, I'm a huge fan of. So I'm currently super excited about the website and can't wait to get it out. So I think it'll be even funner to do this podcast when we've got that to point to as well.
Well, and when the building the website is teaching us so many things that we can talk about on the podcast. If we were just doing this podcast and we wanted to learn about self-publishing and do the podcast, we wouldn't know so much as when we're compiling all this information for the website. And we're really lucky to have you doing for the fantasy stuff, by the way. I don't know what we're going to do for like romance. I mean, we know how to do the research, but our romance stuff is just not going to compare to what you can write about fantasy. Well, what I can write about thriller.
What we're going to do, I've been waiting for you to come to this. What we're going to do is pull some people in to help. We're going to have to pull some people in to at least beta read the stuff that we've written. I mean, because we talk too much about needing to be a part of the genre to truly understand it, that we have to be true to that as well. So we will pull some people in for these genres. We know writers in all the genres.
Luckily, we cover so many genres between the two of us because our genres don't overlap that much from what we read a lot of.
Yeah, so we won't have to pull in too many people, but there definitely will be.
Yeah, all the fantasy stuff, all the sci-fi stuff covered. We've got all the thrillers covered. We've got literary fiction covered. We've got erotica covered, which is a big thing in self-publishing. Romance is the big hole. That's the big one.
Yeah,
and unfortunately,
it's a big hole because it makes the most money. Yeah. All right, but we are veering off into a business meeting between the two of us instead of a podcast.
I just wanted to explain to people why we're talking about the website so much, because I hate talking about my, selling things. And so there it went. And also that's how our business meetings go. All right. I'm going to be back home next week, I think.
All right.
So back to usual. We won't have the UFO light over here.
You won't have the UFO? Sounds good. All right, buddy. Nice work tonight. All right, later.
Thank you for listening to the Written Well podcast, your source for anything and everything in the world of self-publishing.